They built 36 tiny homes on land my family has owned for generations. What the HOA didn't know? My dad runs the most feared demolition crew in the county, and we don't play nice. So, where are you watching from? Hopefully somewhere safer than my neighborhood? Drop it in the comments. And if chaotic suburban drama is your thing, hit that subscribe button. I was walking Duke, our old golden retriever, through the back lot behind our property when I saw it. Bright yellow tape, neon survey flags, fresh tire tracks. My stomach dropped. This land had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather used to run cattle through here. My dad and I cleared brush every spring, marking the boundaries with handmade wooden stakes. Nothing fancy, but everyone knew where our property ended, and now it looked like someone was pretending we didn't exist. Duke growled low as we approached a fresh set of metal stakes hammered into the dirt. I squatted down, tracing the pink spray-painted line on the ground. It cut straight across the base of our back hill, at least 50 feet into our land, and that wasn't even the worst part. In the distance, I saw a small crew of workers unloading concrete forms from a flatbed truck. What the hell were they doing? I jogged across the field, Duke trailing behind me, barking. As I got closer, I realized they were laying the foundation for what looked like a small rectangular structure, maybe a shed or a modular unit. But on our land? I waved my arms. Hey, you guys got a permit to be here? The foreman looked up from his clipboard and raised an eyebrow. HOA development. All legal. We're just following orders. HOA? I stared at him like he'd just spoken another language. This isn't HOA land. This is our family's back lot. He didn't even blink, just turned back to his clipboard. I turned around, scanned the area, and saw it. A tiny, white, temporary sign stuck into the dirt. Phase 1, Sunset Creek Micro Homes. An HOA community project. That was the moment I felt my heartbeat shift from confusion to something closer to rage. Sunset Creek was the HOA that governed the houses 3 blocks over. They had nothing to do with us. Our property had always been outside their jurisdiction. We paid county taxes, not HOA dues. No board, no meetings, no Karen. Until now. I took out my phone, snapped photos of everything. Survey flags, tire tracks, the sign, the workers, and then I called the one person who would understand exactly how bad this was. My dad. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, what's up, kid? They're building on our land, I said, my voice low and cold. There was a pause. Then he said, calm as ever, all right, I'll get the truck. And just like that, things stopped being confusing and started getting real. The sound of diesel engines woke me up before dawn. It wasn't the usual hum of morning traffic or someone's lawnmower warming up too early. This was heavy. Industrial, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through my floorboards. I threw on a hoodie and boots and stepped out the back door. That's when I saw them. A backhoe, a cement truck, and a portable office trailer parked right at the tree line where our backyard faded into the open lot. Our lot. Where my grandfather used to host family cookouts. Where I learned to drive a stick. Where we buried Duke's sister when she passed. 3 workers were already setting up a concrete pour. The backhoe operator gave me a nod like he belonged there. Like we were just neighbors. I didn't wave back. Instead, I walked straight toward the trailer and pounded on the door. A guy in a collared shirt and aviators opened it halfway, already chewing on a protein bar like he didn't have time for this. Can I help you? You're on private property, I said, keeping my voice steady. This isn't HOA land. It's ours. He raised an eyebrow. You with the city? No, I'm the owner's son. We didn't approve any of this. He stepped out, wiping his hands on a napkin. Look, man, I just follow the work orders. It's all through the HOA. They filed the paperwork, got fast-track permits, and told us this parcel was part of their new expansion project. Did they show you a deed? I asked. He shrugged. They had documents. I don't check ownership. That's above my pay grade. I took a deep breath and looked past him. 6 concrete piers were already in the ground. Prefab walls leaned against the delivery truck. These weren't going to be sheds. They were full-on micro homes, tiny homes. and they were already halfway to planting the first one. "You need to stop," I said, backing up to take more photos with my phone. "I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a problem." He didn't argue, just went back inside the trailer and closed the door. That's when I saw her. Karen Ellsworth. She stepped out of a silver SUV wearing a bright blue pantsuit and oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand. She smiled at me like we were old friends. "Good morning, aren't you excited? You'll have new neighbors soon. Sunset Creek's first micro-home phase is officially underway." I looked past her at the excavator, chewing into the soil of my family's land. "Not if I have anything to say about it," I muttered. Karen didn't hear me, but she would. She called herself community-minded. That's the phrase Karen used when I finally cornered her near the construction trailer that afternoon. She was smiling like this was all part of a neighborhood picnic. I wasn't smiling. "You want to tell me why you're building on our land?" I asked, holding out a copy of our property line map. Karen didn't even glance at it. She just clicked her pen and started scribbling something on her clipboard. "Oh, sweetheart," she said without looking up. "This area has been part of Sunset Creek's community redevelopment plan for over a year. You must have missed the announcement mailers." "There were no mailers." "Well, they were sent. If you didn't open them, that's on you." She tapped her clipboard and then flashed me a syrupy grin. This land was underutilized, and the board voted to convert it into affordable tiny housing. "Board?" I blinked. "We're not even in the HOA." Karen's expression didn't change. "Well, we've had to make a few adjustments to our zoning map. The county was very cooperative. The old property lines were outdated anyway." Outdated. I could feel heat rising in my neck. "My family's owned this land since 1951, I said. "We have the deeds, survey maps, everything. My dad still pays taxes on it." Karen waved a hand in the air like she was swatting a fly. "That may be, but this development has already been approved. We've got workers, permits, foundation slabs arriving tomorrow. It's too late to backpedal now." "Too late?" She looked down at her phone, typing quickly. "Besides, we're doing the community a favor. These units are going to provide sustainable housing, solar-powered, green-certified, beautifully minimalist. You'll thank us later." "No one asked you to build anything, especially not here." Karen finally looked me in the eye. "That's where you're wrong. The community asked. And as HOA president, I represent the community." I held her stare. "You're trespassing." She laughed. Not hard, just a little scoff, like she couldn't believe I'd use that word. "I think you should talk to your lawyer before you throw words like that around." She turned and walked back toward the job site, heels clicking over our dirt, like she already owned it. Behind her, workers kept drilling. Another load of building materials pulled up. And there, in the middle of it all, was the land my grandfather left us. Under siege. By people who thought a clipboard and a zip code gave them the right to steal. I pulled out my phone and texted my dad. "It's her, it's Karen, and she's not backing down." His reply came fast. "Neither are we." By the time I pulled into my dad's shop that evening, the sun was hanging low over the hills, throwing long shadows across the gravel lot. The old garage still smelled like grease and diesel, like it always had, like home. He was already waiting out front, leaning against the hood of his rusted blue pickup, sipping coffee from a thermos older than me. I got out of the truck and didn't even have to say anything. He could see it on my face. "So," he said, calm as ever, "they really think they can just take it?" "They've already started pouring slabs," I said. "Karen says it's legal, that we missed some kind of notice. But I know we didn't. We were never even part of that HOA." Dad nodded slowly, then pushed off the hood and walked over to the corner of the garage. He pulled a dusty tarp off an old steel cabinet, revealing something I hadn't seen in years. That red and black logo, faded but still proud. Crawford & Sons Demolition, Est, 1986. "You know what this company was built on?" he asked. I shook my head. "Boundaries," he said. "Knowing what's yours and making damn sure no one else touches it." He pulled open the cabinet. Inside was a stack of old county plats, surveyor maps, and handwritten permits from decades back. The paperwork my grandfather had kept. My dad had updated them. and now they were mine. "She's bluffing," he said. "If they had the right to build, they wouldn't have hidden it. They would have brought the county. They would have sent someone official, not a clipboard queen with an attitude problem." I cracked a smile. "So what now?" He pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. "This is the lawyer your uncle uses for property disputes. Real pit bull. I'll call him in the morning." Then he turned toward the side bay and yanked open the big garage door. Inside sat a Cat 308 excavator, its yellow paint dulled from years of sun and hard work. "She really thought she picked the right hill to build on," he muttered. He ran a hand over the cab door and looked at me. "You remember what I always said about bullies?" "Yeah," I replied. "You said they usually back down when something bigger shows up." "Exactly." Then he cracked his neck and smirked. "Time to remind her just how big we are." Outside, the crickets had started, but inside that garage something had awakened. Something Karen Ellsworth had never planned for. The Crawfords weren't going to roll over. We were going to dig in. I spent the next morning elbow deep in county records. Dad always said if you want to catch someone lying, don't look at what they say. Look at what they sign. The clerk at the zoning office was an older woman named Margie. She wore cat-eye glasses and knew everybody in town. When I told her what was happening, she raised an eyebrow and muttered, "That HOA again?" She led me into the back room where they kept the archive plats and permit files. Everything was still paper here. No cloud servers, no fancy apps, just rows of steel drawers and the quiet buzz of a fluorescent light overhead. Margie pulled the file marked Sunset Creek Expansion Phase 1 and handed it over. "You'll want to sit down for this." The paperwork was thick, too thick for something that was supposed to be a small micro-housing project. Pages and pages of permits, surveys, rezoning approvals. Most of them had been rubber-stamped in one day. That was the first red flag. Then I found it, the document that made my jaw clench. A consent form for adjacent property owners. My family's name was on it, my dad's, my signature. Except I never signed it, and neither did he. They'd forged us. The handwriting was neat. Too neat. The kind you get from someone who's practiced forging more than once. My stomach turned. "Who processed this?" I asked Margie. She leaned over and squinted at the initials at the bottom. "Karen Ellsworth," she said, frowning. "She's not county staff. She's HOA." I flipped to another document. It showed a zoning adjustment made 2 months ago, changing our backlot from agricultural buffer to shared community use. Approved by a 3-person board I'd never heard of, none of them county employees. "Is that even legal?" I asked. Margie sighed. "Depends who you know, and how deep your pockets go." I took photos of every forged signature and scanned copy. Then I slid the file back across the table. "You think this'll be enough to shut it down?" Margie looked me dead in the eye. "It'll be enough to burn it down." When I got back to the truck, I called Dad and told him everything. The forgery, the zoning trick, the fake board approval. There was a pause. Then he said, "We've got them." I stared out across the field where the walls of a tiny home were already going up like nothing was wrong. Karen thought she was playing with blueprints and bylaws, but she just crossed a line drawn by generations, and she signed our names to it. That night we got to work. Dad and I walked the edge of the back lot with stakes, twine, and a stack of laminated signs fresh from the print shop. The county surveyor's office confirmed our boundaries that afternoon. Official lines, verified, stamped. We didn't need permission to mark what was already ours. Each sign we posted read, "Private property, construction trespassing will result in legal action." By morning, there were 18 of them. By afternoon, they were gone, pulled up, snapped in half, and tossed in a pile near the portable toilet at the job site. That was Karen's first move. Her second came in the form of a manila envelope duct taped to our front gate. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Sunset Creek's HOA legal team, threatening us with fines of $10,000 per day for interfering with an approved community development project. 10 grand a day. On land they didn't even own. I showed it to Dad. He didn't say a word, just walked to the garage and started up the excavator. The engine roared to life like it had something to say. That's when the flyers started showing up, stapled to telephone poles, slipped into mailboxes, taped to the community center doors, Karen's face smiling in full color under the title, "Don't Let a Single Family Ruin Our Future." She painted us as obstructionists, said we were holding back affordable progress, claimed we were endangering housing for seniors and veterans. She even tossed in a few made-up quotes from Dad, accusing him of threatening workers with heavy equipment. The phone started ringing, first from reporters, then from neighbors, then from people we hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know why we were trying to destroy the community. That weekend, someone spray-painted "selfish" across our mailbox. And through it all, Karen never stopped smiling. Every time I saw her on site, clipboard in hand, heels perfectly matched to her pastel blouse, she'd wave like we were old friends, like this was just a little disagreement over a parking space. But behind the wave was a message: "We're already winning, you're just slowing it down." That night, I stood under the porch light, watching shadows stretch across the empty lot. Dad came out, handed me a cup of coffee, and said, "You sure you're ready for this to get uglier?" I nodded, because Karen might have torn up our signs, but she hadn't erased the lines. And I wasn't about to let her redraw our future. The sun hadn't even cleared the ridge when I heard the first truck pull in. Gravel crunched under thick off-road tires. Diesel engines hissed. Birds scattered from the trees. I stepped onto the porch with my coffee and watched as one truck after another rolled into our field like a slow-moving cavalry. And at the front of it all was Dad. Hard hat under one arm, cell phone in the other, directing them like a man who'd never retired a day in his life. By 7:15, there were 5 rigs on the property: a compact loader, a flatbed with hydraulic attachments, 2 heavy haulers, and 1 custom-painted excavator with our family name still faintly stenciled on the side, Crawford and Sons. I hadn't seen that crew in years. Some of them I barely recognized, older, grayer, tougher, men with cracked knuckles and sun-worn faces. But when Dad called, they came. No questions, no hesitation. They didn't come with sledgehammers or wrecking balls. Not yet. They came with presence. Because sometimes, just knowing the wrecking crew is there is enough to make people think twice. Karen must have noticed the shift too. She showed up around 9:00, walking straight down the easement path like she owned it, sunglasses pushed up on her head, arms swinging with fake confidence. When she reached the edge of the lot, she paused, just long enough to scan the parked trucks, the hard hats, the silent crew leaning against heavy equipment. Then she plastered on a smile and marched toward Dad. "Mr. Crawford," she chirped, "I understand you're upset, but I'd like to remind you that unauthorized equipment on a shared boundary line is a violation of HOA guidelines." Dad didn't blink. "This isn't shared. It's surveyed. And it's mine." Karen's smile faltered just a hair. "I'll be contacting code enforcement," she snapped. "You do that," he replied, voice calm but unmovable. She turned on her heel and walked off, heels stabbing into the dirt like punctuation marks. From that moment on, the tone changed. The workers on her side started looking over their shoulders. Some trucks stopped showing up altogether. A few neighbors even crossed the lot to ask if we needed anything, if this really was our land, and if what Karen was saying was true. We didn't answer. We let the trucks speak for us. Because we weren't out for violence or chaos, we were there to protect something bigger than walls and permits. This was legacy. And now the crew that built their lives tearing things down was standing guard to hold something up. They called it an urgent community update, but everyone knew it was Karen's emergency HOA meeting. She held it at the community center 3 blocks over, the one with the fake stone facade and plastic flower beds she had insisted were low-maintenance elegance. I showed up late on purpose. I wanted her to see me walk in, wanted her to know we weren't backing down. The room was packed, folding chairs wall to wall, neighbors whispering over lukewarm coffee and stale cookies. At the front stood Karen, flanked by a projector screen and 2 poster boards showing diagrams of Sunset Creek Phase 1, a sustainable future. She wore a pastel blazer and a microphone headset like she was hosting a TED Talk. "As most of you know," she began, voice all velvet and teeth, "our community project has hit an unexpected hurdle. A local family is attempting to interfere with our progress by falsely claiming ownership of the back development lot." All heads turned toward me. She paused for dramatic effect. "This is unfortunate," she said, hands clasped like a news anchor. "But rest assured, the HOA board has verified documentation and permits that prove we have every right to proceed." She clicked the slide remote. A blurry photo of a zoning map appeared, annotated with highlighter and arrows. It was a joke. She tried to power through. She brought up words like green initiative, affordable housing, and shared vision. But something in her voice had changed. She was pressing too hard, talking too fast. Then someone stood up. It was Mr. Langford, retired electrician, lived on Cypress Avenue since the 70s. He cleared his throat. "Karen," he said, "I've known the Crawfords a long time. That land's been theirs since before you were born. You saying they just imagined that?" Karen's smile stiffened. "There's been some confusion, Harold. The boundary lines were rewritten," I said from the back of the room. "By you." Gasps. Someone dropped their coffee cup. Karen's head snapped toward me, mic still live. "You don't have the floor," she snapped. "I've got the deed," I said, raising a copy above my head. She tried to regain control, called me disruptive, told everyone legal matters were being handled privately. But the cracks had already spread. People started murmuring, asking questions, remembering things like when the flyers started, when their fees went up, and when Karen stopped answering emails. For the first time, they didn't just see her polished words. They saw the woman behind the clipboard. And that woman was losing her grip, fast. The first camera crew showed up 2 days later. They parked across the street in a beat-up van with a station logo taped to the side window. The reporter was young, probably fresh out of journalism school, but she knew a story when she saw one. Her name was Jessica Quinn, and she'd been tipped off by a concerned resident. My guess? Langford. Or maybe even one of Karen's board members finally growing a conscience. I met Jessica on our porch. She didn't waste time. "Is it true the HOA built 36 tiny homes on your land without permission?" I handed her the file I'd been carrying around like a second wallet. County records, surveys, our deed, the forged signature. She flipped through it, her eyebrows climbing higher with every page. "Oh, wow," she muttered. Then she looked up at me, recorder already running. "Mind if I film a few shots of the property?" I gestured toward the backfield. "Be my guest." By noon, she was broadcasting live from the dirt road that cut through our lot. Behind her, you could see one of the unfinished tiny homes, the backhoe, and 3 of our demolition trucks lined up like sleeping giants. That night, the segment aired on the local news. Karen's smiling headshot filled the screen under the words, "HOA president accused of land theft, forgery." The phone didn't stop ringing for hours. Neighbors, reporters, even a state senator's office wanting more information. Apparently, someone in planning had been cutting corners, and Karen's name had shown up on more than one suspicious zoning file. But it wasn't the outside attention that shook her. It was the neighbors. People started showing up at her door, demanding meetings, demanding answers. Some of them marched straight to the job site and told the workers to stop. A few even apologized to me, said they'd had their doubts but hadn't wanted to rock the boat. Now the boat was sinking, and nobody wanted to go down with the captain. Karen tried to push back. She sent an email to the HOA mailing list calling the story fake news and accusing me of media manipulation. But then Jessica released the raw footage. No edits. Just a clean, slow pan across the forged signature on the permit application. My name, spelled right but written by someone else. After that, Karen stopped waving when she saw me. And for the first time since this mess started, she looked afraid. The envelope came by courier. Heavy cream stock, gold embossed lettering, sealed with a wax stamp like it was 1825 instead of 2025. Karen's idea of intimidation. I opened it slowly, already guessing what was inside. Sure enough, a letter from a big city law firm claiming I had caused irreparable harm to the community's housing initiative. They accused me of defamation, harassment, obstruction of development, and about a dozen other things that sounded scary if you didn't know better. They wanted $2.5 million in damages, or else they said they'd see us in court. I showed it to Dad over coffee. He didn't even blink. "She's out of moves," he said. "This is all she's got left." But I wasn't laughing, because scare tactics like that work on people, good people, people without resources or backup, and Karen knew it. That letter wasn't just for me. It was for the whole neighborhood. A last-ditch effort to get everyone back in line before the truth swallowed her whole. Too bad we were already 10 steps ahead. We'd been working with a property rights attorney for weeks, a pit bull named Marla Vargas who didn't flinch when Karen's name came up. She'd seen it all before, HOAs with too much power and no accountability. Marla filed for a court injunction 2 days before the letter arrived. And that morning, while Karen was getting her hair done for a press conference nobody asked for, a sheriff's deputy served her a temporary restraining order. She wasn't allowed to build, remove, alter, or occupy any structure on our land until the court hearing next week. That included the 36 tiny homes. The moment she was served, I got a call from one of the contractors. "Hey, we're pulling off the job," he said, voice low. "This thing's about to explode, and we're not sticking around for the fallout." By sunset, half the crew was gone. Karen showed up on our lot just as the last truck pulled away. She marched across the dirt in her pristine white flats, holding the court papers in one hand and her phone in the other. "You think this is over?" she snapped. "You think a piece of paper scares me?" I stepped out from the porch. "No," I said calmly, "but it scares the people who used to work for you." She looked around, at the empty job site, the shut-down tools, the silence where progress used to hum. And for once, she didn't say another word, because she knew. We'd just taken back everything, legally, permanently, and she was out of bluffs. We waited until sunrise, not because we had to, but because it felt right. The permits were signed, the injunction held. The judge ruled in our favor just 48 hours earlier, confirming what we already knew. Karen's project was built on land that wasn't hers, illegally, without real authorization, with forged documents. We didn't need to sneak. We didn't need to ask. We were here to clean up the mess. Dad climbed into the excavator first, just like he had 100 times before. Same movements, same slow ease into the seat, same quiet ritual of checking the controls. I watched him settle into the cab like he'd never left it, like the years hadn't passed. Around us, the crew stood in a wide arc, arms folded, helmets on, waiting for the signal. Boom day. That's what they called it. Not out of pride, not out of revenge, but because sometimes, when people build the wrong things on the wrong land, the only thing left to do is bring it all down. Dad started with the closest unit, Unit 1A, a half-finished microhome with solar panels and a welcome mat that had never been stepped on. He eased the bucket forward, pressed gently into the roofline, and then, with one smooth pull, ripped the whole front wall clean off. It sounded like a soda can being crushed under a boot. The house didn't explode. It folded, frame bent, roof snapped, siding peeled back like paper. And just like that, it was over. The rest came fast. One by one, the homes fell. We took care to avoid utilities. We followed every rule in the book. No reckless swings, no mess we couldn't clean up. It wasn't about rage, it was about reclamation. Halfway through, a crowd gathered along the edge of the easement. Neighbors, reporters, even a few of the workers who used to build here. Phones out, cameras rolling, faces stunned. And then there was Karen. She stood alone on the other side of the property line, hands shaking around a takeout coffee cup, lips pressed so tight they disappeared. She didn't shout this time, didn't threaten, didn't run up with legal printouts or photo ops. She just watched as her empire of glass and lies crumbled, piece by piece. By noon, every unpermitted structure was gone. By dusk, the lot was clean, leveled, fenced, and restaked with the original boundaries. And for the first time in months, the land felt quiet again, like it could finally breathe. The strange part about demolition is what comes after. Not the wreckage, not the silence, but the space. the emptiness that's left behind, waiting to become something new. For a while I just stood there in the open lot, hands on my hips, looking out over the cleared earth. The air still smelled like sawdust and diesel, but it also smelled like possibility. Most people expected us to sell the land, developers called within days, big offers, fast closings, luxury dreams. But that was never the plan. Not for me, not for Dad, not for the man who first fenced off this land with his bare hands, my grandfather. This wasn't just dirt, it was legacy. So, a week after the last of Karen's tiny homes came down, we sent out a letter to every house in the neighborhood. No lawyer jargon, no dramatic headlines, just an invitation. We were holding a meeting, not to fight, not to sue, to rebuild. The community center was full again, but the energy was different, warmer, curious, nervous maybe, but hopeful too. I stepped up to the podium and took a deep breath. "We've all been through something," I said. "Something messy, something painful, but it doesn't have to end that way." I clicked on the projector. The first image appeared, a hand-drawn plan for a memorial garden. Winding paths, raised flower beds, benches with names etched into the wood. "This is what we'd like to do," I continued. "A public garden, open to everyone. A place for families, for kids, for quiet moments." The next slide showed a shaded playground, then a pavilion, then a simple stone monument at the center of the garden, engraved with the words, "In memory of what we protect." No politics, no HOA logos, just space for people to be people. "We want to name it after my grandfather," I said quietly. Not because he was perfect, but because he believed land wasn't just meant to be owned. It was meant to be shared. When I finished, the room was silent. Then someone clapped, then another, and suddenly people were on their feet. Even Diane from 3 doors down, the one who once called me a wrecking ball in boots, stood and wiped a tear from her cheek. I looked over at Dad. He just nodded. And outside that night, under the soft hum of porch lights and the rustle of trees, the land that nearly tore us apart finally became what it was always meant to be, a place where things grow,